Another day, another dollar makes you wonder where your money went. You can scream and you can holler.
Hi, this is Jack Spirko with yet another edition of the Survival Podcast. One man's view of the world in changing times dictated on a 50-mile commute, either to or from the office on a daily basis. This is a morning show. I am currently in Grand Prairie, Texas, on my way to Frisco, Texas, as I do many days. And today's topic has been inspired by a comment on our blog. As I put this podcast together, and remember, it's still very early, it's in its infancy yet, it's only less than a dozen shows so far, I wanted to make this a different kind of survival podcast, a different kind of survival discussion, a different source of information about modern survivalism and modern preparedness, modern homesteading, modern self-sufficiency. What I mean by different is I did not want to speak to exclusively, and if you're on the fringes, hey man, I'm glad you're here, but I did not want to exclusively speak to the fringes of the survivalist movement, the people that live in the woods and always wear camo and are convinced the Illuminati's at the heart of the earth controlling everything that's going on. And I didn't want to exclusively serve the environmental extremist, the person that thinks, again, burning a drop of oil is akin to killing the planet. So somewhere in between those two groups, to me, is the majority of people that are out there that need to be prepared, that are starting to concern themselves by looking around and trying to figure out, hey, man, what's going on? What's going to happen? How expensive is oil going to get? How expensive is gas going to get? Can this economy continue to go this way? Can society continue to go this way? Even if society kind of makes it, is my employment sector at risk? Am I at risk of a natural disaster? Are there things that can happen to me that are unpleasant? How do I, set up a lifestyle that's designed to weather those storms, be they man-made, environmental, or economic in nature, be they regional, national, global, or personal in nature. And I wanted to be as inclusive as I could with that and make everybody feel welcome. Well, one of my very first commenters that posted a very thoughtful comment and a very insightful comment on my post about the missed lessons of Hurricane Katrina, and gave some really good suggestions for future shows in there, such as sterilizing water without electricity in an environment like that where everything's rancid and putrefied. And I'm going to do that show. I think it's a great suggestion. Well, this guy turns out to be an acknowledged socialist. Does not believe that we should have the Second Amendment to our Constitution. I don't think he's obstructionist telling us how to live our lives, but he doesn't think that's maybe the best way to run a country. They don't have that type of protection in Canada. He doesn't think it should exist. He is a socialist by his own terms. I'm not saying socialist in a negative connotation here, but I feel very, very encouraged that individual has listened to some of my shows, enjoyed them, and felt encouraged to participate. If I can make that guy feel comfortable here, then I think I'm accomplishing my goal of making this all inclusive to normal people. That said, I am not a socialist. If you go to thesurvivalpodcast.com, you'll see one of the pages on the blog is called The Libertarian View, and I am a libertarian. I want the government out of my face. I want them out of your face. I do not want the intrusion. I do not want the hard hand of government force in my life. I want taxes reduced, if not eliminated. I want the United States out of the business of policing world affairs. I want the fiscal common sense that's spoken of but seldom heeded by the Republican Party, and I want the liberal view of personal action. If you want to go out and do something stupid, it doesn't hurt me or anybody else, only yourself, or do any act between consenting adults, I want you free to do that. I don't want to police that. I don't care about that. I just don't want myself or other taxpayers to subsidize your behavior. or subsidize your stupidity when you end up with consequences. I want you to be in it on your own when you do these stupid things. And I think most people actually kind of feel that way at their core, but they worry about how it's going to be put into practice, and honestly, we don't have that choice. Bob Barr's running for Libertarian candidate as president. I may vote for him. I may vote for somebody else. I haven't decided yet, but we know Bob Barr's not going to win. That will be a protest vote if I do it. So I just wanted to be very clear before I start talking about some of the positive aspects of socialism and how socialism can work in certain environments. It is very clear that I'm not a socialist. I am a lifelong member of the NRA. I own a lot of guns, and I think you should too. I believe defending my property is much better suited with a gun than with a baseball bat or a knife or a stick or a club of some kind. And if you break in my house, you're going to go out horizontal, and I'm not going to apologize to you for it, even though you won't be around to hear it, and I won't be apologizing to your family. If you don't want to get shot, don't break in my house. And fortunately for Texans, there's a lot of Texans that feel that way, and if you break in a house in this state, not only might you get shot, but odds are the police are going to pat the guy in the head that didn't give him his gun back and let him send him on about his merry way. So I'm about as far from a governmental socialist as you can be. The issue, though, that I have is that I think a lot of people are actually socialists on a microcosm scale. They believe in the socialist concept at a rudimentary level, and I think that socialism can work at a community level. And what I mean by that is, and this is very much the same thing that the conservatives talk about when they let the private sector handle it. When socialism is done at a regional or community level by people that have decided they want to be part of a society, work on a little commune, if you want to go that radical, or simply have neighborhood groups that agree to certain concepts and thoughts and idealisms and help out their neighbors, that is socialism, and if I may say so, it's socialism at its finest. But there's a fundamental reality to the world here. And that is that socialism is one of those things that I believe works really good on a small scale, but as soon as the government gets involved in socialism and starts mandating socialism and forces socialism upon people, it starts to break down and show its fundamental flaws. But we have to look at the positive aspects and the place for social consciousness of our individuals. Because, let's face it, folks, you and I in the United States, if you happen to be a fellow American citizen, we're kind of the last bastion of non-socialism in the world, and our country's really pretty socialist today. We've allowed the government to institute programs that are very, very social welfare programs in nature, and that makes us a socialist nation. We're just not a socialist nation the way that, let's say, our neighbors in northern Canada are, or in the UK are. We're certainly not a socialist nation the way that, let's say, Cuba is, or Venezuela, or even China is still very much a socialist government, even though they're moving to a capitalist economy, and that may be a blending of the worst of two worlds. The Indian government is very socialist in nature. So when you start looking at it, you're talking billions and billions of people across the world. The vast majority of the world have willingly submitted themselves to socialism. They've chosen socialism. Why have they done that? They've done that because it sells well and it does work on a small scale. Here's what I mean. If you think about the most socialist environment you can find on the planet, it's a kindergarten classroom. Kindergarten is the most socialist micro-community in the world, because in kindergarten, we all share, right? And what a great way to run a society is, if people think. Everybody shares. The Karl Marx said, from each according to his ability, and to each according to his needs. It's a very soft-selling message. And in a kindergarten classroom with 20 or 30 little kids that aren't out trying to build lives for themselves, aren't out accumulating wealth, that have a given specific amount of property, toys and gadgets and gizmos and papers and pencils and crayons, and there's a finite level of resources there, and it's between those four walls, led by a teacher who has their best interest at heart, and all of them show up at a certain time, and all of them leave at a certain time. and no one is prevented from leaving when the time comes to leave, that socialist environment works perfectly. There are a few places in the world that are as well run and as friendly and comfortable as a kindergarten classroom. Kindergarten classroom in the United States may be one of the gentlest environments in the world. But that doesn't mean you can run a country that way. Because what is different when we're trying to run a country that way? Well, first of all, we have people that are all out striving to have more than they do now. Every member of society would like to be a little bit higher up than they are from a means standpoint. They would like a little more money, a little more resource, a little more time. Now, the very wealthy, there's people that are just comfortable. I don't need more. All right? They just want to preserve what they have. But the middle class, the poor, the lower middle class, and the upper middle class, all of these groups, which are the vast majority of society, that pay the bills for everything, by the way, would all like to just do a little bit better than they're doing. So everybody's out striving for more. In the real world, we don't have a finite level of resources. We have an infinite level of resources. Now, we have a finite level of oil, right? But there's other things available besides oil, right? And we just aren't out there making use of them yet. But we will eventually. We're going to have a big catastrophic failure, I believe, but then we're going to figure this thing out. It's how the human condition works. So socialism, when you take it out into a place like that, it starts to fall apart. Then what really destroys it is state-mandated, enforced socialism. Let's look at a different environment. Let's look at a small community that decides to get together and live cooperatively. They go out and they get 100 families together. They go out and buy land together. And everybody gets a piece of land. And they all do like the sharecropping thing where people grow different commodities and they set up their own little community and they try to be as self-sufficient as a community as possible. They all agree to take care of each other. They all agree to contribute a little bit of what they produce to a common good, and that's used to pay the taxes on the overall land. They do the land in a trust situation or something like that. They have a small little local elected government that makes decisions on behalf of the whole community when they need to be made. Everybody shares, everybody takes care of each other. If somebody gets sick, the rest of the community rallies around them and figures out how to get them whatever help they need. That's a socialist economy, folks. That's as socialist as it gets. It's also not far off from what people like the Amish and the Mennonites do. But the reality is that those people all can leave. It's not forced upon them. When your government of your nation becomes socialist, they tell you how much they're going to take, and they decide who's going to get the money. In that environment that I just described, if Joe is slacking off, and Joe is a deadbeat, and Joe does not want to contribute to society, then the people in that society can easily identify Joe. They can have a discussion with him. Joe, if you want to be part of our group, this is what's required of you. If you don't want to do that, then you can leave and go find somewhere else to live. Likewise, Joe can say, man, I don't want to do this. I don't want to give up, 5 or 10 or 20% or whatever it is of my production and my land and my efforts to somebody else. I don't want to be part of this system. I want to go away. So Joe can leave, or Joe can be told to leave, right? In the government standpoint, you can be told to leave by the government, but that doesn't work real well when you have to leave a nation. Because where else are you going to go? And you don't really have the choice to leave, again, because where else are you going to go? And it's really difficult to leave a nation. It's not difficult to leave a small community. It's not difficult to leave a classroom. So these are all instances where you can see that there's positive aspects to socialism. If you think about this, here's another thing that we really should think about and understand. And it's, again, I'm not a pro-socialist government guy. I think that's pretty clear. But I think that we do need to understand why have a billion-plus people, multi-billion people, just embrace this concept. Because it sounds good, and because it's intrinsically the way that if humans are left completely alone by the government, that they choose to live. And they choose to live with socialism and liberty. And I think that chosen socialism that one can walk away from at any time, that one is not forced into, is compatible with liberty, but inherently government-imposed socialism is totally incompatible with liberty. I'm going to come back to my commenter at the end of this podcast here soon and kind of pose a couple hard questions for him. And they're not argumentative, they're just meant to make you think. But before I do that, let's look at a socialist society. Many of the survivalist community would look to the Native American society before we came and screwed it up and say it was a perfect society. In a Native American society, every man did as he pleased, and every woman did as she pleased. No man in most of the Native American nations was subservient to any other man. No man was valued more than another intrinsically. Now, there might be a chief to a tribe, there might be a shaman or somebody, there might be an elder that has respect, but no man had to submit himself as inferior to any other man, and women had complete equal rights among the Native Americans. If a woman wanted to hunt, she was allowed to hunt. Just most women chose not to. It's not the most feminine thing in the world, but there were women hunters. About the only thing that was really a division of the sexes that was kind of mandated in most societies was warfare. Men fought the wars, and the women did not in most instances. But if you look at a native society, okay, it's a whole group of people living together. Most of the time they had the ability to move their entire little civilization anytime they wanted to. They all hunted, fished, and farmed, and they all shared the fruits of their labor. Decisions were made collectively for the good of the tribe. That is socialism, folks. That is socialism. And if you look at native tribes in Africa, South America, New Guinea today, they're all run that way. They're socialist, but they're also democratic. And that's the big difference. They're completely democratic. Every man has a say. Every woman has a say. Every person has a say. Everybody gets together and discusses things in a committee environment, and then a decision is made. And if you ever get to a point where you just are no longer happy with those decisions, you have the freedom to leave. Now, it may be a difficult decision. I'm not saying it's easy, but you do have the choice. So to me, the reason that the socialist government philosophy has been such an easy sell to people, especially people in nations that were poor or oppressed, is because the agrarian society that we come from, the hunter-gatherer societies that we come from, all these little micro-societies have major socialist components that actually work and are actually useful and actually help and are actually beneficial. And biggest among them is voluntary. They are voluntary socialist structures. If you are stuck in the middle of China and you don't like the socialist government and you say something about it, then you can end up in prison. We all know this. In the United States, if you don't like the socialist policy, you can say whatever you like about it, and as long as you're not threatening anybody, you're not likely to end up in prison. However, you're still going to pay your taxes. Your money will still be used for the socialist programs that you do not like, and you will still obey all the laws, including the ones that infringe upon your basic human rights, such as telling you can't do something that doesn't hurt anybody else. Right? We have gone away from the wisdom of Oliver Wendell Holmes, who said, "The right to swing my fist ends where the other man's nose begins." Right? So I just wanted to kind of be a little bit thought-provoking today. Now, my challenge to my commenter, and hopefully you've listened this long and you've heard what I've had to say up till now. The thing about this commenter is he said a couple things that I found very, very interesting, and I wonder how they justify against the socialist government. One thing that this individual said is that while he disagreed with the right to keep and bear arms, the right to hold a gun, and he doesn't think you should be able to own a gun, he did believe that defending your property was important and you should know how to do it. That you should be able to defend your property, you have the right to defend your property, and that he was even informed and somewhat trained on how to defend his property. Now, I would simply ask him this. There's no way threatening or anything, but if I, armed with a carbine rifle, and I am a trained former United States Army soldier, I was part of the United States Army Airborne, armed with a single carbine, if he had 5 people just like him trying to defend his home and none of them were armed with guns, I could take over his property in mere minutes. Not because I'm like some super Dolph Lundgren super soldier or something like that. Simply because I have a gun, I'm trained how to use it, and because with that gun, I can strike at distances beyond any other implement that's known to man. Even if the guy was armed with, say, bows and arrows, all right? Bow and arrow, and I'm 100 yards away. Good luck, all right? So my question to you is, if you believe I should be able to defend my home, and a law that takes away guns from me will only take away guns from people that obey the law, and someone that would invade or threaten my home or my property is clearly willing to violate the law, therefore clearly willing to illegally possess a weapon, right? What's to stop them from getting a gun and coming to my house? And how would you defend against that person? I'd like to ask that. And I don't want to go into a huge Second Amendment debate here. And I'd like to see an answer to that. And I'll just let that answer be whatever it is. We're not going to turn this into a two-way shoot match here. But now I have something that I think maybe we could get really into between the two of us. And maybe we could come up with some really good content for the show with. This individual also said that his eventual goal is to get some nice piece of property that's off-grid, be self-sufficient, and live out in the woods in an environmentally friendly manner, and be able to provide his own needs without the needs of others providing for him. I think that's great. I think that's wonderful. I think it's something that we should all aspire to. Because even if you only get 50% there, if everybody got 50% there, environmentally we'd be better off, economically we'd be better off, and society-wise we'd be better off. But I want to know how you justify that against the socialist mindset, from each according to his ability and to each according to his needs. See, the minute you start owning a land that produces and provides sustenance for you, you become wealthy. I know it doesn't seem that way anymore because we now measure wealth with dollars. But in a place or a point in society where the economy starts to fail, where people start to starve, what prevents your socialist government from seizing your land, from seizing your assets, from seizing your ability to produce food, or from saying a half of what you produce must be given to us? See, I want to know how that justifies against socialism. What prevents your socialist government that you prize from coming in and saying, now you must pay more tax and more tax and more tax on your land, to the point where your land is taxed so heavily from just financial assets that you can no longer afford the lifestyle that you work so hard for? How does that work out? Breaking it down to a simple joke that I got by email a long time ago. And I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't remember it exactly, but it does explain the situation. A father who works really hard, who was quite wealthy and built a business and raised a young daughter to the point where she was ready to go off to school, and she had been raised in a very fiscally conservative mindset, sends her off to college. She goes to her first year of college, and of course Dad pays the bills for everything. While she's in college, she's lectured to by all these liberal, socialist-minded professors about the evils of the world and the evils of the economy, and things like that, and how we're predatory, and how capitalism is at odds with societal good, and things like that. Well, this changes her view of her father and everything that he stands for. And when she goes home, she's talking to Dad about, what she's learned in school so far, and it turns out she's gotten straight A's. In spite of this waywardness from the family mindset, so to speak, she has learned well these subjects, and she has studied, and she's worked her butt off, and she's gotten straight A's. And her dad says, well, now you think that what I do is wrong, and that I should give away a portion of what I have to the government. I should pay more taxes, that we're predatory by nature. Let me ask you a question, though. Your friend, Tammy, she went to school with you, right? And she says, yeah. She goes, did Tammy get straight A's? And she goes, no, Tammy got C's. Because Tammy didn't study hard. Tammy didn't work hard. Tammy didn't put the effort I did. And she spent more time at parties, and she did not take things as seriously as she should, so she got C's. See, Daddy, I'm a good girl. I've studied hard. I've learned. I know my stuff. Dad says, well, honey, then this is what I think we should do. I think we should phone up your college, and I think we should take, you have a 4.0 GPA, and Tammy has a 3.0 GPA. Or 2.0 GPA. Now, 3.0, a B, is good enough for anybody. So why don't you give away 1 point of your GPA in every subject to Tammy? Then you'll both have B's, and everybody will be the same. And she says, That's crazy. I worked hard for what I have. Why should I give away my efforts, my hard results to someone that didn't work hard? And he says, welcome home. Welcome back. Okay? That's what socialism is. It's taking the people that worked hard enough to get an A and giving a quarter of what they've done to the people that slacked off and got a C, so that everybody can have a B, so that we're all equal, so that we can all share. That's how I see socialism. And again, in the right environment, in a chosen environment, in a free environment, in a place you can willfully exit if you choose to. I think a lot of these things work. I think they worked great for our, early hunter-gatherer societies, our tribal societies. I think they work well when 20 people, 20 families get together and decide to buy a piece of a mountain and kind of split it up and cooperate with each other and live in some level of cooperativeness, a level that everybody's agreeable to, and that anybody that wants to can just kind of sell off their piece and go somewhere else anytime they want. That works. But it doesn't work, at least for me, when the state tells a man what he must do, how he must do it, whom he must help, why he must help them, and takes away freedom of choice, takes away freedom of dissent, and takes away the freedom to defend oneself properly. That's my view. I know everybody doesn't share it. That's okay. I actually just wanted this podcast to make you think. If you're socialist-minded, I wanted it to make you think. If you're highly conservative, I wanted it to make you think about why this message gets sold so easily that billions of people have jumped on board with it. And I want to point out something. The greatest bastion of socialism that there ever was the Soviet Union. They were socialist in every way, shape, or form. They took it to the hilt. They went socialist big. It didn't work. Our Native American societies before we came up here and screwed them up and stole their land and took what they had and messed up their societies, and we really did. And we can't go back and fix it. I'm not for giving America back to the Native Americans. I don't think it's practical at this point in society. But if we would have left them alone, they'd still be in great shape. And they had a great society. They were socialist. But they were voluntary, liberated socialists. Socialism is something that's best left to individuals among themselves and out of the hands of government. Different viewpoint. Hopefully it's made you think. Again, I'm Jack Spirko with the Survival Podcast. Tomorrow we're going to go into some more practical things that you can do to be prepared. Hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I hope you have a great day.
Makes you wonder where your money went. You can scream and you can holler. It really doesn't matter, 'cause it all gets spent.